Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The world of work is constantly changing. In just a few years, innovations like cloud computing and mobile connectivity have radically reshaped how businesses operate. And now new technologies such as the Internet of Things and 5G are predicted to do the same once again. I'm Carly Page, news editor of ITPro, and joining me to share more about what's next for business is Shivvy Jervis, futurist and founder of FutureScape 248. Shivvy, thank you so much for joining us.
Carly, thanks for having me here. Absolutely delighted.
So the future of work is something that we've spoken about quite a lot over the course of this week. Are there any developments that you see as having a particularly big impact in this area?
Absolutely. And Carly, what we know of work has seen such an upheaval since earlier this year, right? Right from how we get there during a pandemic to what it will actually look like when we are there for those who are actually still traveling to an office, and to the new WFH, which is working from home or working from hammock, wherever you are really, and the tools that actually we might end up using. So I think if I may, I'd like to focus and hone in on one of the areas, digital advancements and tools that I believe will help in many ways, COVID or no COVID. And I see these use cases spanning right from on-the-job training to prototyping new products, selling, pitching to clients, upskilling your existing workforce. And actually also this technology will allow employees to interact in a multi-network system in real time to use with each other in context, which is far better than what we have right now. So research from neuroscience shows that we retain and learn 4 times more using immersive medium. So I want to talk about mixed reality. What do we mean by this? I'm talking about sensory experiences that take you either into a simulation or they bring an object that's online or digital into and overlaid onto your real world. So AR, augmented reality, for example, is when you hold up your tablet or your device and trigger something, so using a visual trigger, and it overlays a digital visual of anything onto your real world. And then digital objects like a blueprint, a user guide, a person even who's talking about information about a product that you're thinking of buying appears in your real world, standing in your living room. And then VR, of course, has still felt, I suppose, a little bit like you see it more at trade events. Most of us don't have a VR headset at home. So it's something that feels like it's more for gamers and the exhibition floor conferences. But there is an area which is mixed reality, which I think will see a lot of uptake. It's already growing. It grew by 80% between 2017 and 2019 alone, Carly. So this is a fusion between the functionalities of AR and VR. It keeps you in the real world as far as possible. Manufacturing, defense, engineering, they all enable their workforce to apply this to the real world and create plans when suitable. So for instance, an engineer can fix a complicated piece of vital machinery, or someone else could create a safer environment on the factory floor or unit simply by putting on, for example, a Microsoft HoloLens. But other sectors I see are using this as well. So I do advise healthcare, housing, government, and I'm actually seeing more uptake, for example, even in the operating room. Doctors are manipulating a 3D version of your organ while they're operating on you, boosting your chance of a safe, a surgery by, in some cases, 30%. The housing sector and local governments as well are actually using mixed reality to secure vital funding by giving stakeholders a much more immersive walkthrough than a flat PDF document or PowerPoint deck. So I think at this point, just to bring home some of the value for organizations who aren't embedding mixed reality as yet, or who feel this is a bit removed for them, it's more for the entertainment sector, or it's perhaps something that's only for the tech giants, that's a bit of a myth. I want to play a video that my team and I at our forecasting lab have pulled together with some vivid use cases. So if I can request the ITPro team to please play the video on slide 1, that would be fantastic.
As a part of the day one onboarding experience, a new hire is shown how to use an AR headset. He chooses to take the tour in the evening, after his second day in the office. In each conference room, he can access a history of meetings designed to take him inside important methods and ways of working. After choosing a meeting, the room comes to life with artifacts photographed at the time the meeting took place. He takes his time, learning as he goes. He even sees who the key players in that meeting were and has the option to follow up with them if he wants.
Bonjour Amy, ça va?
Bonjour Eloise, hold on.
Auto-translating. Vous avez vérifié le document que je vous ai envoyé?
Yeah, all looks great. Thanks very much. Au revoir.
Bonne journée, au revoir, merci.
Scan, browse, select, move, and place. So that could mean less of this.
So, Carly, I deliberately chose to end that with a slightly lighter clip, given the news is just so heavy right now. But what it does do is show us that with mixed reality in enterprise, we can dial our level of immersion up and down for customers. I've actually just advised a company who've chosen to use AR as a way to take their best salespeople to places that it would normally not be before. So let's say you're online and you're thinking of buying a particular television set or gadget, and you've shortlisted a couple. Instead of just activating a boring text bot, what you could do is hold your phone over, for example, the brand logo. That then triggers a video where you have kind of an avatar of their best salesperson appearing on your screen, doing a real-time talk about comparing those particular 3 televisions or giving you more information on one particular one. And that, in turn, I think creates more conversions. But in all of this, access is key. And if we don't have the access and, for example, the price point of mixed reality headsets, then we're in trouble. But now mixed reality headsets are so much cheaper than they were just 3-5 years ago. In particular, the HoloLens is really instinctual. I have no commercial connection to them, just so you know. But really, just to summarize, what you can create on either something that's compatible with a HoloLens or, in most cases, an AR platform, because everyone has a smartphone, the user just has to then activate the camera. So during an age now that we need to be more contactless, much less of being on-site for our jobs, I think mixed reality is something we would do to keep on our radar, to help our workforce absorb knowledge, create products as a team, connect with our workforce, and also with our consumers in a way that we haven't been able to do before.
The various trends reshaping the workplace are generally referred to as Industry 4.0, including things like IoT, AI, and augmented reality. What are some of the shifts that you've seen in this space?
Thanks for that, Carly. So I've been talking about the 4th Industrial Revolution, or Industry 4.0, for about a decade now. It's very much here and now. We're already actually halfway through this phase. And the technologies that make up Industry 4.0 is a global market that's expected to grow to $214 billion just by 2023. So there is a vast commercial opportunity here. But well before the pandemic even struck, a couple of years ago, it occurred to me that we absolutely needed to find a way to champion and ensure that we had an extension of Industry 4.0. And so I decided in the last couple of months, really, prompted by COVID, to call this Humanity 5.0. And what I mean by this is, let's keep this technological progress people-focused at all times. So let's think about creating, for example, a thought leadership platform where we'll showcase the most remarkable discoveries from tech, science, social sciences that will have a profound impact on mankind. And that kind of segues into some of the striking shifts I'm seeing here. So I'd love to bring up a slide that reflects this. If we could please bring up slide 2. So, what this brings to life is that we can have infinite sensors and data capacity, but no real human progress. And so I've always said that this human potential must be elevated, must be accelerated together with the tech prowess. And a digital engineering isn't people-centered at its core. Carly will go fast, sure, but will we actually really going where we need to? Will it be inclusive and sustainable growth? And with the technologies of Industry 4.0, we are now finally seeing something more heartening. Both the inventors and creators of these services are starting to factor in the human need, even at pre-build stage, rather than thinking of our human need as retrofitted into the equation. And also the enterprise users of this, organizations that are presumably watching right now, are finally also thinking more about embedding them responsibly and keeping them people-centered. The second observation is kind of speaks to the responsibility element that I just alluded to. So the need for ethical oversight. One thing that we forget about is all these digital innovations are built by people. And so we still need ethical oversight. AI, data science, cybersecurity, blockchain in particular are prone to issues of security, bias, for example, a programmer's bias stemming into AI-powered recruitment software. And then we've also got to think of things like coercive control, where data is used to monitor others, even unintentionally. And then issues, of course, Carly, of legality. Where does accountability lie when something goes wrong? If a driverless car hurts someone, who's responsible? So I think all organizations need to think about having someone that can oversee this and ensure that the tools they're using actually fit their policy and brand values. And then lastly, more social good impact. It's about time that more and more digital tools and products from Industry 4.0 are actually factoring in the environmental footprint and wider societal benefit. Profit and purpose isn't just good corporate social responsibility. So having a positive footprint on the communities in which a business operates, both the provider of the Industry 4.0 technology and also the business using it, is very important. And finally, Carly, what the pandemic is doing in particular when it comes to running our organizations is forcing a reassessment of transparency, ethics, and values. And so something that I like to call the moral economy, a heightened focus on responsible governance. What are the values driving us? How will our actions reflect them? And from analyzing a number of sentiment polls, my futuring lab, FutureScape 248, are finding that those leaders that are seen as making socially irresponsible decisions now, 2020 and 2021, will see reputation and sales affected post-COVID. So we do well to think a lot more about ethics than we do.
Requires constantly changing. Upskilling is a key concern for many employers. How vital is this, and what are some of the considerations at play?
So, Kali, this is such a sensitive time, isn't it, for the job market? And my heart goes out to the scores and thousands of people that are finding themselves out of a job. And so many tragic cuts across sectors. And yet, organizations still have a duty to their existing workforces and, of course, the generations that will come after that. So thinking about planning for reskilling shouldn't fall by the wayside. If we can help our existing and future workforces develop capability for the new jobs, what we then have is a very crucial ability to take this workforce forward through to 2025 and beyond. So some of the research that I'm doing is revealing that as soon as 2024, something like 45% of us may require significant upskilling in order to remain competitive in the market. And upskilling isn't just a benefit for the employer, but also for the employee. So those of us who feel that our companies are invested in our future and that we don't have to make a choice between our career and growth tend to stay with that company. This then, of course, creates loyalty and saves the business money in the long run. So employee retention. But also with upskilling, Carly, an employee can provide expertise now after a bit of upskilling on a variety of topics when normally a new hire might have had to be made. And a good example of this is perhaps putting software developers through a legal course so they can actually start to understand data protection or IP law. And it really saves a lot of headaches down the line, particularly for SMEs who have smaller budgets and need to stay financially viable. It helps in that situation. And now we're seeing more and more non-linear trajectories at organizations, right? We're not seeing the typical linear growth and progression. So I don't think, it will become irregular for employees to actually switch departments more within the business. We talk about portfolio careers. Well, actually, why not do that within one organization rather than constantly flitting to different companies? And it's always easier to retrain a good employee. And finally, given we're going to see more virtual workplaces, this calls for tech management skills in people that previously weren't having to work alongside an AI tool, a data science dashboard, and or blockchain systems. So more than ever, we need our workforces to at least have the basic digital fluency to get under the hood of these technologies with just enough fundamental information that allows them to work alongside it and then helps keep them thriving in their jobs.
Great. And sticking to the subject of skills, bringing more women and BAME individuals into the tech workforce is still a persistent problem. How do you think businesses can play a role in helping to tackle this?
This one's really close to my heart, Carly, for obvious reasons. You know, I'm a woman and I'm Asian, so I belong to both. And I do think there's more we can do to address this imbalance of representation from these groups, be it in the tech sector, mind you, or for that matter, you know, other industries. This isn't just nice to have, this is important because companies in the top quartile for ethnic diversity, for example, are found to be 33% more likely to financially outperform those in the bottom quartile. And also companies in the top quartile for gender diversity have more than a 20% likelihood of generating higher profits. So you constantly hear people say this makes business sense, but that's absolutely true. So I think there are a few ways. I think the first is quite close to my heart because I've been doing this for the past 5 years. Being involved with schools and parents at the age where, for example, particularly with women or girls, they're at that pivotal point where actually exposing them to the wonders of STEM careers could actually influence the outcome and what field they actually enter. So try to ensure that girls or women are reached inside their own communities and they can be encouraged to pursue STEM subjects and see these alternative kind of setups and break some of those stereotypes we have. A lot of the young women that I mentor say, Shivvy, I still feel technology, as much as we like to say it's progressive, it's so male-dominated or it's very fiercely competitive. Pardon me. And actually, a lot of that is, you know, a stereotype. That's true of most sectors, so why just single out tech? And finally, I think we also need to address the cultural bias, which I think can be countered by outreach programs in the community. Secondly, businesses that are backing, for example, talent showcases or innovation prizes within their organization and wider industry, I think will also be helping. You know, personally, I've got colleagues and myself who, by virtue of being nominated for a Women in Tech Award or Asian Media Showcase, not because we want to be pigeonholed, but because other initiatives just don't seem to take into account a more multicultural appeal, have seen that really help in our careers. It's been a real platform and boost for us in building our own businesses. So there becomes some sort of necessity to have specific initiatives that champion BAME groups or women only, to boost that pipeline of talent, to bring this showcase to the fore and ask more women to, you know, and BAME groups not to count themselves out, but actually to be able to put themselves forward. And I think lastly, perhaps extending the remit of STEM into STEAM, showcasing that there's a vast variety, Carly, of creative roles. And you and I know this, we're both, you know, writers, journalists, storytellers, in creative roles in technology where you don't have to be the coder, right? You know, I have a media and comms background as a journalist, but I got headhunted by Telefonica, the world's third largest telco, you know, 7 years ago, and I was with them for 6 years. And so I got to actually work in a tech company, not being a coder, but actually running their digital media operations. And so, you know, we've got lots of reports that are showing, you know, 70% of ethnic minority workers, for example, are being left out of sectors that they could really, you know, create a valuable contribution in. So how can we make this more appealing to women and BAME groups? I think there's a lot to do here, and it's hopeful. I think we're doing more, thankfully.
Absolutely. And I guess one of the factors that complicates this is the fact that some of the jobs that current students will be doing when they enter the workforce, they don't exist yet. So can you give us some examples of this?
Sure. I speak a lot about workforce and talent and people, Carly. Pardon me. And some believe that, you know, the skills needed for employees to thrive are largely technical or things like coding, like I was just saying. But the World Economic Forum, for example, have done intensive research to show that apart from technical expertise, skills that are actually what we term as soft skills, but actually are core skills, will be just as critical as we move into the future. So things like intuition, creativity, the art of persuasion, the ability to synchronize with others, these aren't things that machines can replicate easily, you know, human consciousness, really. So I want to bring up a slide now that focuses on 5 of the more unusual jobs in technology. So we could bring that up, please. This is specific to tech. And the reason why I've picked these 5 is that they're much more unique to the ones that we normally see. So this is slide 3, just to the ITPro team, if you don't mind bringing that up, please. And until that's coming up, I'll speak to that anyway. So one of those is AI-assisted healthcare worker. And what this is essentially is someone that can work alongside healthcare. They have good tech literacy to be able to work, for example, with the AI systems that are monitoring a patient's vitals. By 2040, the number of people aged 75 or more will have actually doubled, Carly. So that's a huge demand for people to work in care. But you're already seeing AI tools from the likes of Babylon and other companies being integrated in NHS hospitals and care homes, where they will monitor the patient 24/7 and take that human error out of the equation. As soon as they flag something is wrong, they send an alert. And this is, for example, resulting in a great progress in preventing septicemia, for example. But many more of these roles, for example, sit at the intersection of where technology meets another required discipline. So tech and ethics, there you go, point 2, tech ethicist. And this is someone who kind of is a moral compass. Side by side with them, you would need someone with a legal background to identify things like whose responsibility is it when AI goes rogue, where does the onus lie? And then the one that I find particularly fascinating is, of course, immersive reality, because this is almost a blend of neurology and neuroscience and technology. And this is someone who could be an entry-level role or could be quite senior, is helping integrate, AR advertising, AR platforms, mixed reality systems such as the HoloLens, developing content for that for an organization. They could even be someone that you outsource this to. And then, of course, programmers who will be working on what I call the tactile internet. This, Carly, is the web of touch. This is making it possible for us to finally send the sense of touch across the web by slipping on a haptic glove. So someone who has a background in haptics, robotics, programming, Internet of Things would be great for this space. Anyone that wants to learn more about that, by the way, do look up King's College, Web of Touch, Professor Misha Dola, fascinating stuff. And then finally, as nations think about working towards a zero carbon or carbon neutral future and mitigating climate change, we, of course, will need to see alternate sources of energy here. And so we will need someone that can plan that out in the same way you have a smart city planner. Carly, universities are training many STEM students, not just in concrete skills, but how to actually apply them. So I know one of my researchers is doing a course at Northumbria University, and he recently began a master's degree in space law, being trained on space, AI, and robotics. This is not something that exists now, but will do in the future. So I think educational institutions are starting to lead the charge in adapting their courses and agendas for quite an uncertain future.
Moving on to the topic of leadership, the ongoing coronavirus crisis has undoubtedly been a test of many leaders' abilities. Are there any approaches or ways of thinking that you think could help during this time?
Yes, God, that's a really good question. How much time do we have today? So pre-COVID, Carly, we thought about leading in a digital economy. Now we're leading digitally in a hybrid economy. One approach that I often talk about in my master classes is something that I thought perhaps could resonate today. So I call it the Inventor Mindset. There's an author of a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and he writes about the inherent conflict between norms and ingenuity. And he says, and I quote, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are but a few." And I chose it because I think it sort of reminds us of how we felt perhaps when we started out in our careers, perhaps when we began our companies, for those watching who are founders. We didn't come with this massive set of fixed assumptions, right? We asked, where do I want to take this? We listened, we invited opinion from a variety of people. So this approach of the inventor mindset is where I'm calling for someone in a leadership role. It doesn't have to be C-suite, it can be at any level of leadership, so long as you're a decision maker. Calling for you to temporarily suspend the value that we normally place on our long-term experience. So to actually ask, what if my current strategies are based on uncontested thinking that could actually very well be holding us back? And to flourish through COVID and in 2021, I think leaders could do well, Carly, to show some of the behaviors that we often see with inventors. You talk to founders a great deal as well.
Yeah.
One of them is getting down and dirty in the trenches and frontline to really understand what are your main employees seeing and dealing with. You're right there as your main guys are seeing the situation unfold. But unfortunately, normally, as a business grows, you get further and further away from that. That gap between leaders and the front line actually does start to grow. So let's try and kind of close that gap. The other is, startup founders are really good at pivoting. They have that openness and flexibility to pivot to what customers want at a particular point. And I think having an inventor mindset will help organizations now and through into next year to maybe think about adapting things in a more nimble way. And finally, I think what this could also do is help us think about not constantly shying away from experimentation. So the inventor mindset calls for you to stay close to risk. And it may feel a little bit nerve-wracking during a crisis because all we're thinking about is steady the ship. But I think organizations would be myopic to kill the experimentation when it might have actually opened up vital sources of revenue just when the company needed it the most.
Sure. And I guess being a futurologist, are there any aspects of what you do in your work that leaders might be able to apply within their own organizations?
Indeed, Carly. And I mean, I'm often up at 2 a.m. Writing feverishly on a Post-it. I still actually love the analog world. I mean, like pen to paper. As much as I've got 3 devices, I still go back to writing stuff down. And that's a journalist in me. May I actually ask us to possibly bring up slide 4 here? And then once it comes on, I'll sort of talk us through that. And this just gives you a little bit of an idea of what I do. So as a futurologist, I have to consolidate many factors: market forces, emerging innovations, economic conditions, and then put that into context and bring that all into one unified timeline. And then fast track that into the future to make informed projections on what will work 9 months, 2 years, 10 years, or even 2 decades down the line. I'm currently partnering with the Mayor of London's office on envisioning the future city of 2040. And that's really calling for a lot. Kind of have to think about where we will be in 2 decades. But I truly believe, Carly, that foresight is something that's available to all of us. Everyone that's watching right now can think about the art of futuring. Particularly those in a leadership position do need to take on the approach that in order to rally growth, they have to be able to stop and actually ask some of the deep foundational questions. So let me just clarify, futuring isn't just planning for the future or having a blueprint. All of us have an agenda for the future. We all have endless spreadsheets and work documents where we've got to plan what we're doing for the first quarter of next year. But this is more about visionary thinking. So to be able to say, yes, I have these immediate issues in front of me, but let's still set aside some time for the more visionary thinking to lead my team, my department, my company into the next 5 years, not just the next 18 months. Also, this isn't just for the top brass leaders. These tools of futuring can equip others to actually anticipate unpredictability, not just react to it, and allow us to take a bit of that emotional and personal bias out of some of the planning decisions that we make. And finally, Carly, and there's a lot of sound research, I clearly love my research, that suggests that only 2 in 5 organizations, this is as of 2019, believed that the leadership mindsets they were seeing advocated in their organizations were even tangibly impacting their way of working or business. So there is such an opportunity here now to maybe think about more adaptive styles of leading, both with things like the inventor mindset or thinking like a futurist.
And another area we've focused on for some time is artificial intelligence. Are there any new developments in that space that you think businesses should be aware of now?
Absolutely. Kari, I've advocated for, I would say, more than 4 years now for software that needs to have more human cognition to bridge that gap between man and machine. And for the last 3 years, I've been heavily immersed in studying something called affective computing, and that's affective with an A. This is also called human perception AI. I like to call this emotive AI or emotionally intelligent AI. It's a fascinating strand. So what this does is it uses software that has the capacity to perceive and respond accurately to human emotion. and in its response to factor that in so that it's in full situational context. These are algorithms that can actually detect tone, nuances in our conversation, the ebbs and flows of dialogue, not stilted back and forth conversations you have with a text bot on a website when you're looking to buy something from a provider or you want to talk to your bank. So these systems actually recognize and then simulate emotion in their response, and it allows them to understand the processes of the human brain. So just to explain with a sort of relatable example, if we just think about the number of times we speak to a text bot, either through an app or through our browser for your business, online banking, booking an airline ticket, by 2022, I'd hazard a guess, Carly, that we actually will speak more to bots than we will to our partners. All right, and maybe that's a good thing for some people. But as soon as you go on the website to look at this, up pops this little dialogue box. And then if you share the experience that I have, in most cases, I come away thinking that's a half hour of my life I'm not getting back. Because the conversation was stilted, I didn't get what I wanted, and it really made little sense. Perhaps it gave me a little bit of input, but to be honest, I then had to wait till the next working day to phone between the confines of 9 to 5 to be able to reach someone who knew what they were talking about. So what if we could actually humanize bots? What if we could take them beyond level 1 or 2 of behavior and possibly even give it a friendly face? So one thing that I've explored is something called digital humans. There's a company called Soul Machines. Again, no commercial connection. So feel free to look them up. Created by the guy who actually worked on Avatar. And what this does is gives these bots a human face. It takes them also, crucially, beyond level 1 or 2 behavior. It's sort of like Alexa and Siri on steroids. But it gives it a friendly face. When you activate this from your device, through the same way you would activate a text bot for customer service, it makes it very clear that it's not an actual person. So there's no fooling people here. But it also has very high computational ability, and it is linked into your company intranet or your banking services database. And so it allows you to ask a detailed question, understand not only what you're asking and find that information by virtue of being linked to that database, but it actually also senses the way in which you're asking it and the mood you're in. Now, if you allow your front-facing camera to be enabled the same way you do for face recognition software, then it can interpret this with apparently 95% accuracy. Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Are you upset? Tired? Are you in a rush? And it acknowledges that in the response, which is shown in customer service to actually bring down the stress of a consumer by more than 40%. If you decide you don't want to do this and it's invading your privacy, you can choose just to activate audio mode. In this case, it has something like 85 to 90% accuracy at detecting from voice recognition software the way in which you're saying something, not just what you're asking. So what this can do, Carly, is sort of understand what you're asking of it. Please find the last 5 transactions to Adam in the last 6 weeks from my banking software. But if you're in a rush, it'll acknowledge that. Or if you're frustrated and you can't get what you want, it will actually speak to you and acknowledge that. You can also then use it as just a first point of contact. It doesn't have to be the be-all and end-all of the transaction. You could get the initial information from here, and then it could still pass you on to an actual live person, because let's face it, there will be some limitations. So that's just sort of one use case, and I'm happy to talk through more.
Yeah, amazing. I was going to say this technology sounds fascinating, but where do you see it being used most within organizations?
So one area, Carly, we're seeing this used more, and it's very, I suppose, timely, is in learning software. So, think about the number of people that are now doing internal training with their organizations or learning a new skill set on Coursera or any of these platforms for their jobs. You're seeing now some of these companies thinking about embedding this emotionally sensitive software. So what it would do is adapt the module in real time to your unique way of learning, hyper-personalizing your learning journey, because, you and I won't learn in the same way. My 4-year-old child learns differently from my 3-year-old daughter. So it tries to optimize it based on what it's reading from your expression, if you've got your camera activated, or what you're saying, if you're using just audio. And it will prompt you to say, listen, what are you finding difficult about this? Or if it sees you kind of squinting and looking puzzled at the screen, as sometimes I often do when I'm doing cybersecurity training software for my company, I'm sat there going, I thought I was smart, but this is really baffling me. It will adapt that in real time, factor that in, and adapt the rest of the module so that you actually stay engaged You stay in the mall rather than going, this is just too much, I can't do this anymore. But from a B2B, B2C, or B2B2C perspective, there's a lot of cost savings to be had from using these responsive tools. So we'll cue a video in a minute. And if I just tee that up for you, this video is going to show you 3 use cases. One of them is actually the digital humans I just described. Then they'll show you something that's emotive AI used in road safety software by some guys called Effectiva, who are from a spin-off from MIT. And this is road safety software where this system, with a very small black box on your dashboard, can track in real time if you're tired, distracted, and alert you in real time. And then the third case is financial planning software, where it allows you to understand the emotional reasons behind your practical choices. We often feel our way to reason. We don't always think our way to logic. That's now a recognized sort of theory from the neuroscience world. So, why did you pick one financial plan over the other? And so I think this video will really bring that to life. If we can play slide 5 with the video, please.
The more that we can make computers like humans so that we intuitively know how to interact with them, the more you can interact cooperatively with it.
Hello, I'm Fatima.
I'm Jamie.
I'm Cash.
I'm Yumi.
Creating incredibly lifelike, emotionally responsive digital humans with personality and character that allow machines to talk to us literally face to face.
Have you already downloaded your product?
Yes, I have.
I'm here today to show you how I can help customers with their banking needs.
And the whole purpose is really to investigate, to explore the role that digital humans can play in improving the customer experience.
It was like talking to a real person.
What's my customer number, Jamie?
You can find your customer number on the back of your ANZ debit or credit card. Welcome to Mercedes-Benz. I'm here to help you with your new car.
You look anxious, but rest assured your health is my primary concern.
To deliver more care to more patients for less cost.
So we're not trying to fool people that it is a person, but we're trying to give the biological signals which we respond to. How do we interact with those machines? So they're working on our terms. We're basically putting humans at the center of technology.
Technology is able to identify if you're distracted while driving based on whether your eyes and your head are on the road or off the road. Indicators of drowsiness. If you're yawning, you're blinkering, it can alert you and suggest that you maybe stop for some coffee. Can adjust the music or the temperature. We are also able to identify facial and vocal expressions of emotions such as joy, anger, laughter. When we're able to detect all of these social and cognitive cues, the car can adapt in real time.
I used to make decisions about my finances by what people said was best and not how I really felt. The Emotion Advisor gave me the confidence to reimagine the way I think about money and how to manage my wealth. The personalised report gave me new insights into my true feelings, as well as how my thinking style influences how I make financial decisions. The Emotion Advisor is an interactive online experience that requires you to answer 9 thinking style questions. Rank your financial priorities. Watch a financial scenario video. Read your personalised report and then give your feedback.
So Kali, hopefully we can see from that emotive AI, is used to generate business intelligence, but we do need to use it responsibly. The actual software and the coding is very powerful. It's programmed to a high standard, deep learning neural networks powered, and the computing ability, of course, is vast. For me, a major use case for this and a major reason really is these are systems that are always on. They're not just within the confines of a human being available, but also I think it can make sense of the vast amounts of data in organizations. Only 20% of organizational data is extractable and digitized. The rest is dark data or inextractable. And I think AI with this cognitive ability, it isn't just about emotion. It isn't a sweet little tool. Is actually incredibly practical. And I'm seeing a lot of organizations roll this out, right from banks to governments, to make better sense of some of the hidden data in the organization, because it adds that nuance that a person can bring to it and works with people.
Yeah. Amazing. I think we have time for one more question. So I just want to touch on the subject of digital transformation. So as we've covered in quite a few of our sessions this week, Digital transformation is a goal for many organizations, but it's certainly not without obstacles. So how can organizations work to circumvent these?
Thanks, Carly. When we talk about innovation, we can't ignore transformation, and digital transformation is a term that we hear used so often. It's really bandied about, and yet it can be quite misunderstood when it comes to actual rollout. In my advisory work with organizations, it's become more clear to me that every business's digital transformation journey not just looks different, but has a completely different life cycle, and actually it's quite a different beast, different phases, very particular kind of situational context that sets it apart from one business to another. And I think while it's important to talk about what we can do with it, I think it's also important to think about when we're blueprinting our own digital transformation agenda, to keep in mind some of the thinking that actually can be a bit damaging. So we could cue the last slide of the day, please. And this will hopefully bring up what I believe are three of the kind of leading myths that I think we need to debunk about digital transformation. So, there's a stat out there that says only 30% of businesses outside the tech sector have actually fully realized the potential of their digital investments. And they're losing out on these cost savings and growth, particularly when the optimal mix of these technologies could really save their companies a great deal and create new business lines. But a lot of organizations say to me, Shivvy, this is more for the tech sector. I think this is just way too expensive. The financial investment is just too high. But it really surprises them when we chart out a plan together where the goals of digital transformation can actually be achieved. And Carly, I think you hopefully concur with this. In many cases, at 1/3 the cost of what an annual IT systems upgrade or overhaul is budgeted for at a major organization. So often I'll say to them, guys, these tools are not going to cost you the earth. And I think you really have a bit of a sort of a, misconception there. I think the second is that, people think that this is very much the remit of the IT department, that it's something that's very much only blueprinted by the CTO. But this isn't just a tech challenge. It doesn't just take the shape of software. This must be planned by diverse people and see representation at that blueprint planning table at that particular point from across business lines. So bring in the outside experts who rally the right mix. Bring in someone from HR, finance, communications, core functions, sales, not just the IT team. And I think the last is that we still think a lot of it as a software change, but actually it's also about a mindset training and resource management. In fact, digital transformation, Carly, is more about people and human capital than just digital tools. So, hopefully we can see why some of these three common mistakes or ways of thinking can actually hold people back. And by mitigating this early on, being aware of it, you can have a successful innovation model that actually has all the three things you need: the speed, the scope, and the scale. And of course, the fourth, probably the most important, sustainability.
Amazing. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us, Shivvy. I'm sure our viewers will agree that's been really interesting. And thank you at home for watching.